Hello once again from the Prim Reaper. This is just going to be a really short video. I realized after I finished the last one that I maybe made psychology look a bit more bleak than it actually is. So what I thought I might do is just kind of do like a casual video reading a few sections from the same textbook that are outside of that chapter that I read last time, just so that you don't get the wrong idea. I mean, a lot of this textbook is still really supportive and totally in line with what I want in psychology, so I thought maybe it might be nice for you guys to hear some segments from the other chapters. So without further ado, I figure it's probably safe to skip the section on Freud. I think we've all heard plenty enough from him and we all know a fair bit about his theories. But Alfred Adler was another early contributor to psychoanalysis, and he's actually got some really interesting ideas that I thought I might read. So this section is called Social Interest and Community Feeling. So social interest and community feeling are probably Adler's most significant and distinctive concepts. These terms refer to individuals' awareness of being part of the human community and to individuals' attitudes in dealing with the social world. Social interest includes striving for a better future for humanity. The socialization process, which begins in childhood, involves finding a place in society and acquiring a sense of belonging and of contributing. Social interest is taught, learned, and used. Adler equated social interest with a sense of identification and empathy with others. To see with the eyes of another, to hear with the ears of another, to feel with the heart of another. Social interest is the central indicator of mental health. Those with social interest tend to direct the striving towards the healthy and socially useful side of life. From the Adlerian perspective, as social interest develops, feelings of inferiority and alienation diminish. People express social interest through shared activity and mutual respect. Individual psychology rests on a central belief that our happiness and success are largely related to this social connectedness. Those who lack this community feeling become discouraged and end up on the useless side of life. Adler noted that we are socially embedded and cannot be understood in isolation from the social context. We seek a place in the family and in society to fulfill basic needs for security, acceptance, and worthiness. Many of the problems we experience are related to the fear of not being accepted by the groups that we value. If our sense of belonging is not fulfilled, anxiety is the result. Only when we feel united with others are we able to act with courage in facing and dealing with our problems. So I do question his use of the word useless there. He doesn't really mean it as in like a worthless person. He just means a state of mental unhealthiness, of lacking connection to other people, because his idea of mental health was in having that social connection, in having that connectedness with other people in society. So it's kind of interesting when you contrast that to the feminist chapter, in which they're basically saying that people should go forth and change society because it's full of oppression and that's what's causing everybody's problems. I just thought that that was kind of an interesting contrast that I wanted to pair up first thing here. So the next chapter in this textbook is Existential Therapy, which has never really been one of my favorites, admittedly, because I always thought it sounded a little too full of woo. But there are a few sections in this chapter that offer some concise and really interesting ways of describing certain human phenomena, so I just thought that I would read those sections to you. This first one is about the way we make choices, and it starts as follows. Existential guilt is being aware of having evaded a commitment or having chosen not to choose. This is the guilt we experience when we do not live authentically. It results from allowing others to define us or make choices for us. An inauthentic mode of existence consists of lacking awareness of personal responsibility for our lives and passively assuming that our existence is largely controlled by external forces. So even the other chapters in this textbook are basically critiquing the feminist chapter's ways of thinking. Its ways of taking responsibility from women because, after all, they don't properly control their own lives. The patriarchy does that. So far, in both Adlerian and existential terms, the feminist chapter promotes a very detached and unhealthy way of thinking. Imagine that. So I'm just going to read the next couple of sections together and then I'll comment on them afterwards because they kind of just build on each other. One of the greatest fears of clients is that they will discover that there is no core, no self, no substance, and that they are merely reflections of everyone's expectations of them. A client may say, "My fear is that I'll discover I'm nobody, that there really is nothing to me. I'll find out that I'm an empty shell, hollow inside, and nothing will exist if I shed my masks." Existential therapists may begin by asking their clients to allow themselves to intensify the feeling that they are nothing more than the sum of others' expectations, and that they are merely the introjects of parents and parent substitutes. The sense of isolation comes when we recognize that we cannot depend on anyone else for our own confirmation. That is, we alone must give a sense of meaning to life, and we alone must decide how we will live. If we are unable to tolerate ourselves when we are alone, how can we expect anyone else to be enriched by our company? And then lastly, perhaps one of the functions of therapy is to help clients distinguish between a neurotically dependent attachment to another and a life-affirming relationship in which both persons are enhanced. So you can probably see what I mean by woo. I think this chapter is the most philosophical in the text, which can make it a little bit more difficult to understand. But once you peel away the overly complicated language, you get a better idea of what they mean, and a lot of it actually makes quite a bit of sense. You probably know somebody, at least I sure do, who basically presents a different persona depending on the groups of people that they surround themselves with. In existential terms, this is a very inauthentic way of living, and people can essentially forget who they are beneath the masks that they present to others. So part of existentialist therapy is getting people to shed these personas and to learn to become comfortable with themselves, because only when we are comfortable with ourselves can we truly have a mutual relationship with another person, rather than a neurotic attachment in which we're just basing our own personal affirmations on what somebody else thinks of us and on what we are in the presence of others, as opposed to an appreciation of our own genuine selves and the genuine selves of others. So the next one that I'm going to read is actually person-centered therapy, and it's one of my favorites, so I'll just get right to it. So, the main creator of person-centered therapy is a fellow named Carl Rogers, and I always really appreciated his positive view of humanity and his optimism for humanity. So, I think it'll really come across in these sections. So, the first one says, Rogers firmly maintains that people are trustworthy, resourceful, capable of self-understanding and self-direction, able to make constructive changes, and able to live effective and productive lives. When therapists are able to experience and communicate their realness, caring, and non-judgmental understanding, significant changes in the client are most likely to occur. He maintains that 3 therapist attributes create a growth-promoting climate in which individuals can move forward and become what they are capable of becoming. Number 1, congruence, genuineness or realness. Number 2, unconditional positive regard, acceptance and caring. And 3, accurate empathetic understanding, an ability to deeply grasp the subjective world of another person. There's one line in this text that I really love that basically summarizes Rogers' views and really aligns with what I feel that therapy should be and the goals that it should have. So it's basically a direct quote from him. If I can provide a certain type of relationship, the other person will discover within himself or herself the capacity to use that relationship for growth and change, and personal development will occur. The notion of genuineness is actually a really interesting one. Rogers basically argues that one of the ways that we can become mentally unhealthy is when our self-concept drifts too far away from our internalized ideal self. When this happens, we can become overly self-critical and feel as though we're not living our best lives, even if our ideal best life is basically unobtainable. So by having a genuine therapist who is comfortable in their own skin, they can basically learn to model these genuine feelings and can learn to be kinder to themselves and also to be more realistic about their self-expectations. The idea of empathy and unconditional positive regard basically go together. A lot of people really don't have this kind of positive and accepting environment very often in their personal lives. A person-centered therapist isn't necessarily meant to condone all aspects of an individual's life, but they're basically meant to be accepting of that person where they're at and to present a realistic reflection of the client's feelings that demonstrates an accurate understanding of their experiences. By putting these three things together, the therapist creates a condition in which the client feels comfortable exploring their own feelings and experiences and can learn new ways of viewing and accepting themselves that they can then carry with them outside of therapy. So there are many more therapies in this textbook that I could choose from, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to pick one more from the cognitive behavior therapy section called Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. It's probably one of my favorites. It's largely about recognizing irrational beliefs and disputing them, and then replacing them with more realistic ways of behaving and thinking. So I'm just going to start with one section here called the ABC theory of personality. The ABC theory of personality is central to rational emotive behavior theory and practice. A is the existence of a fact, an event, or the behavior or attitude of an individual. C is the emotional and behavioral consequence or reaction of the individual. The reaction can be either healthy or unhealthy. A, the activating event, does not cause C, the emotional consequence. Instead, B, which is the person's belief about A, largely causes C, the emotional reaction. If a person experiences depression after a divorce, for example, it may not be the divorce itself that causes the depressive reaction, but the person's beliefs about being a failure, being rejected, or losing a mate. How is an emotional disturbance fostered? It is fed by the self-defeating sentences that clients continually repeat to themselves, such as, "I am totally to blame for the divorce," "I am a miserable failure and everything I did was wrong," "I am a worthless person." After A, B, and C comes D, disputing. Essentially, D is the application of methods to help clients challenge their irrational beliefs. There are three components of this disputing process: detecting, debating, and discriminating. First, clients learn how to detect their irrational beliefs, particularly their absolutist shoulds and musts, their awfulizing, their self-downing. Then clients debate their dysfunctional beliefs by learning how to logically and empirically question them and to vigorously argue themselves out of and act against believing them. Finally, clients learn to discriminate irrational self-defeating beliefs from rational self-helping beliefs. Although rational emotive behavior therapy uses many other cognitive, emotional, and behavioral methods to help clients minimize their irrational beliefs, it stresses this process of disputing both during therapy sessions and in everyday life. Eventually, clients arrive at E, an effective philosophy which has a practical side. A new and effective belief system consists of replacing unhealthy thoughts with healthy ones. If we are successful in doing this, we also create F, a new set of feelings. Instead of feeling seriously anxious and depressed, we feel healthily sorry and disappointed in accord with a situation. So in rational emotive behavior therapy, they use several different techniques. First of all, there is the challenging the musts and the shoulds that people come up with. Some examples they provide here are, "Why must people treat me fairly?" Or, "If life doesn't always go the way I would like to, it isn't the end of the world, it's just inconvenient." So it's just challenging the thought patterns that people must always do things in a certain way, or that life always must go in a certain way, or otherwise it's the worst thing in the world. Another one is in changing one's language. Clients learn that musts, oughts, and shoulds can be replaced with preferences. Instead of saying, "It would be absolutely awful if," they learn to say, "It would be inconvenient if." Clients who use language patterns that reflect helplessness and self-condemnation can learn to employ new self-statements which help them think and behave differently. As a consequence, they also begin to feel differently. So some homework techniques that these therapists like to use to help people are actually kind of interesting, and I thought that I might briefly go over them here just so that people who are interested might be able to practice them for themselves. So the first one is just rational emotive imagery. This technique is a form of intense mental practice designed to establish new emotional patterns. Clients imagine themselves thinking, feeling, and behaving exactly the way that they would like to think, feel, and behave in real life. They can also be shown how to imagine one of the worst things that could happen to them, how to feel unhealthily upset about this situation, how to intensely experience their feelings, and then how to change the experience to a healthy negative feeling. The next one is role-playing. There are both emotional and behavioral components in role-playing. The therapist often interrupts to show clients what they are telling themselves to create their disturbances and what they can do to change their unhealthy feelings to healthy ones. Clients can rehearse certain behaviors to bring out what they feel in a situation. The focus is on working through the underlying irrational beliefs that are related to unpleasant feelings. The next one is shame-attacking exercises. Ellis has developed exercises to help people reduce shame over behaving in certain ways. He thinks that we can stubbornly refuse to feel ashamed by telling ourselves that it is not catastrophic if someone thinks we are foolish. The main point of these exercises, which typically involve both emotive and behavioral components, is that clients work to feel unashamed even when others clearly disapprove of them. These exercises are aimed at increasing self-acceptance and mature responsibility, as well as helping clients see that much of what they think of as being shameful has to do with the way they define reality for themselves. So some of the examples they do provide here are just getting people to go out and do ridiculous things like wear very bright clothing designed to attract attention, or go to a grocery store and ask for a left-handed monkey wrench. By carrying out such assignments, clients are likely to find that other people are really not all that interested in their behavior. They work on themselves so that they do not feel ashamed or humiliated, even when they acknowledge that some of their acts will lead to judgments by others. They continue practicing these exercises until they realize that their feelings of shame are self-created and until they are able to behave in less inhibited ways. Clients eventually learn that they often have no reason for continuing to let others' reactions or possible disapproval stop them from doing the things that they would like to do. I really quite like that one. The last one here is the use of force and vigor. Ellis has suggested the use of force and energy as a way to help clients go from intellectual to emotional insight. Clients are also shown how to conduct forceful dialogues with themselves, in which they express their unsubstantiated beliefs and then powerfully dispute them. Sometimes the therapist will engage in reverse role-playing by strongly clinging to the client's self-defeating philosophy. So an example of this is the therapist saying, yes, you are a terrible person if you forget to do this thing. And then the client is basically forced to challenge that, just to kind of give examples of fighting these irrational beliefs and replacing them with more realistic and more rational ways of thinking. As you can see by these examples, there are lots of therapies and models in this textbook that are focused on building up an individual's strengths and by providing a positive and caring environment to help people overcome their difficulties. I just wanted to demonstrate that the whole feminist thing is really only a small segment of all of this, not the whole of psychology. Here, you can see right here the difference in size. This is the normal section of counseling. And this is the crazy feminist side of psychology. Therapy can be a very effective way of overcoming personal troubles, as long as you go to somebody who practices on this side, not this side of psychology. So there you have it. I'm just going to cut this video off here. I just wanted to provide a counterbalance to the train wreck that was the last video. I'm preparing to start my new class next month, and I'm sure that it will be full of lots of really interesting and helpful information that will pertain very much to my future counseling career.
just had an interesting thought. Yeah, actually, fuck this.
We're gonna have a good time next semester. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.